Welcome to today's deep dive. I am so glad you are joining us.
Hello, everyone.
Today, we are looking at something very special, a really fantastic tool for language learners. We are going to listen to an everyday conversation.
Yes, the best kind of practice.
Exactly. We have a transcript, which is the written text of a conversation from the Mr. English channel. This is a source designed specifically for people learning English.
Right.
And in this conversation, two people, Emily and Paul, are talking about their daily routines.
Why?
Now, a daily routine is just a series of things you do every single day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep.
It is a pleasure to be here to discuss this. Our mission today is not just to see what Emily and Paul do all day.
No, definitely not.
We are using their conversation as a masterclass. We want to help you talk about your own life in English. We will extract the most useful vocabulary, and we'll look at the interesting differences in how humans organize their days.
It's so useful.
And because this deep dive is tailored for you, the English learner, we are going to keep our pace measured and very accessible.
That pacing is so important. We will take our time. We will clearly signpost our transitions so you can follow along easily. Let's pause for a moment right at the beginning and just look at the core concept here.
Daily habits.
Yes, daily habits. Learning a language is, in itself, a daily habit. It requires doing a little bit every day. That makes analyzing daily routines the perfect topic for us to explore.
It really is. When you learn to describe your daily routine, well, you are learning the most fundamental building blocks of English. You use these words every single day.
You do.
Before we look at the morning, let's briefly discuss a grammar rule that Emily and Paul use throughout this entire text. When we talk about routines, we use a verb tense called the present simple.
The present simple.
Exactly.
That means we say, I wake up, she takes the bus, or he drinks coffee.
Right. We do not say, I'm waking up when we talk about a general habit. We just use the base form of the verb. We will see this over and over in Emily and Paul's conversation.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start at the very beginning of the day. The morning routine.
For many people, the morning is a battle.
Oh, absolutely.
It is a daily struggle to wake up. In our source text, the very first thing we learn is that Emily and Paul have opposite personalities when it comes to the morning. Emily describes herself as a morning person, while Paul calls himself a night owl.
In English, we use the idiom night owl to describe someone who feels most awake, active, and energetic late in the evening or at night.
Yes.
We borrow this idea from the owl, which is a nocturnal bird, a bird that naturally stays awake in the dark. Paul thrives at night, which means his mornings are, well, very difficult.
And Emily is the complete opposite. Let's explain what a morning person is.
Please do.
A morning person naturally enjoys the early hours. They often wake up feeling refreshed when the sun rises. Notice how English uses a very simple, literal phrase morning person for one concept, and a colorful animal metaphor night owl for the other.
It paints a really clear picture. Because Emily is a morning person, she starts her day early.
Very early.
On weekdays, meaning the days from Monday to Friday, she wakes up at 6:30 a.m. But it is not just the time that is interesting. It is how she wakes up. She uses an alarm on her phone, but she chooses a very soft music sound.
Soft music, right?
She specifically notes that loud noises make her jumpy.
Let's look closely at that word, jumpy. It is an excellent adjective for your vocabulary.
It really is.
If you feel jumpy, you feel nervous, anxious, or easily surprised, you can physically picture it. A sudden loud alarm rings and your body actually jumps a little bit in the bed. By adding the letter Y to the verb jump, we create an adjective describing that nervous feeling. Emily avoids feeling jumpy by waking up gently.
We see that pattern with other words too, like adding Y to sleep to get sleepy.
Exactly.
Now contrast Emily's gentle music with Paul's morning. Paul tries to wake up at 7:30 a.m. However, he needs 5 different alarms.
5 alarms.
Yes, 5. He sets them for 7.00, 7.05, 7.6, and so on. He constantly hits the snooze button until he finally gets out of bed at 7:30.
What's fascinating here is the language they use to describe the snooze button. The snooze button is a feature on an alarm clock or a phone.
Right.
When the alarm rings, you press snooze to stop the noise, but the alarm will ring again in 5 or 10 minutes. The verb, to snooze, means to sleep lightly for a short time.
Paul relies heavily on this button, but Emily points out a big danger in the text. She says that when you use the snooze button, your sleep is broken into tiny pieces.
That is a very powerful way to describe it.
It really is a striking metaphor.
We usually think of physical objects breaking into pieces, like a glass dropping on the floor. Here, Emily uses that physical imagery to describe something invisible, sleep. Because the alarm wakes Paul up every 5 minutes, he never gets a deep, continuous rest. His rest is shattered. This makes waking up an even bigger struggle for him.
Once they finally leave their beds, their first actions show us more about their personalities. Emily stays very calm. The first thing she does is stretch her arms and her legs.
Stretching is so important.
She explains that stretching wakes up her body. Then she washes her face with cold water and brushes her teeth.
Notice the sequence words we naturally use when describing a routine. First, she stretches. Then she washes her face. After that, she brushes her teeth.
Very clear transitions.
These small transition words help organize the story of your day. Stretching is a physical action that increases blood flow, which is a very healthy habit.
Now, Paul's first action is entirely different. He does not stretch.
Not at all.
He goes immediately to the kitchen because he is thirsty. He drinks a glass of water, and then he goes straight to his small coffee machine. He actually says in the text that he cannot live without his morning coffee.
We often use that kind of exaggeration in English to show how important something is. I cannot live without it.
Yes, it shows strong feeling.
Paul needs the caffeine, which is the chemical in coffee that wakes up the brain. Interestingly, he brushes his teeth after he drinks his coffee, which is the opposite of Emily's routine.
They also have completely different approaches to their morning fuel, their breakfast.
Yeah.
Emily prefers a light breakfast.
Right.
She drinks green tea, noting that it is very healthy. For food, she chooses yogurt with fruit, or perhaps a piece of toast with honey.
She chooses foods that are easy to digest. Paul, however, needs a heavy breakfast.
Very heavy.
The source tells us he cooks 2 eggs and eats them with bread. On the weekends, when he does not have to work early, he makes pancakes. Emily actually compliments him in the conversation, calling him a good cook because of his pancakes.
There's an important grammar point hidden in their breakfast habits, the verbs make and do. In English, learners often confuse these two verbs.
It is a very common challenge.
When Paul prepares his eggs and pancakes, he makes breakfast. We use make when we create or build something new. We will see the verb do used later in the day for different types of actions.
That is a crucial distinction for learners to practice. Let's take a brief pause here. We want you, the listener, to think about your own morning routine. Try to describe it in your head using the present simple tense.
Do you wake up early?
Do you hit the snooze button?
Do you make a big breakfast, or do you just drink a cup of coffee?
Connecting these English words to your personal life is the most effective way to remember them.
Absolutely.
Picture your own kitchen and your own alarm clock as we move forward. Now let's transition to the next major part of their day: getting dressed, the commute, and the workday environment.
Yes. After breakfast, it is time to get ready for work. The source highlights a clear difference in their clothing choices, driven by where they work.
Where they work changes everything.
It does. Emily goes to a physical office building. Therefore, she wears professional clothes.
Professional clothes.
This means clothing appropriate for a formal business environment. She puts on her coat, grabs her bag, and heads out the door.
Paul works from home. Because he stays in his house, he wears casual clothes. Casual means comfortable, everyday clothing. You do not wear a suit and tie to sit at your own kitchen table.
No, you certainly do not.
After getting dressed, they face the journey to work. This brings us to a vital vocabulary word for any English learner, especially in a business context: the commute. The word commute can be a noun or a verb. As a noun, it means the regular journey between your home and your workplace. As a verb, it is the action of traveling that distance.
Let's look at Emily's commute. She has a 20-minute bus ride. The text mentions that her bus stop is very close to her house, which is convenient.
Very convenient.
But what stands out is how she utilizes that time. She does not simply sit and wait. She reads a book or listens to music. She actively uses her commute to relax her mind before the stress of the workday begins.
Contrast that with Paul's situation. Paul proudly states that his commute is exactly 5 seconds long.
5 seconds.
He simply walks from his bedroom to his desk in the living room.
A 5-second commute sounds like a dream for anyone who sits in heavy traffic every morning.
It does sound ideal, but the text explores both the pros and the cons, the positive and negative aspects of working from home.
Let's talk about those.
The positive side is obvious. Paul experiences no traffic, and he never has to worry about catching a crowded bus in the rain.
However, Paul is very honest about the negative side. He admits it is sometimes hard to stay focused. When your office is located right next to your bedroom, your brain can easily get confused.
That is very true.
The physical boundary between resting space and working space disappears.
That lack of physical separation is a common modern struggle. So they arrive at their desks. Emily begins her workday at 8:30 a.m. Paul starts slightly later at 9:00 a.m. Despite their different locations and start times, their very first task is identical.
They both check their emails.
Checking emails is truly a universal morning habit in the professional world today.
It really is. But after that initial task, their social environments look very different. Emily arrives at her office building, turns on her computer, and physically greets the people she works with.
The text uses the word colleagues. Let's pause to examine this word, as the pronunciation can be tricky.
Yes, please explain this one.
It is spelled Colleegues. The ending GUE simply makes a hard G sound. Colleague. A colleague is someone you work with in a profession or business.
You will also frequently hear the word coworker. The prefix ECO means together, so a coworker is someone who works together with you. They mean the exact same thing.
Perfect explanation.
Emily interacts with her colleagues in person. The text specifically notes that on Mondays they hold large morning meetings to discuss their projects for the week.
Paul does not have that physical interaction. Working from his living room, he relies entirely on video calls to communicate with his team. He looks at his colleagues through a computer screen.
And Paul expresses a very relatable feeling here. He says he misses seeing people in person.
Grammatically, this is an excellent sentence to analyze. He misses seeing people. After the verb miss, when we want to use another action, we must use the ing form of the verb, which is called a gerund.
A gerund, right.
We do not say, he misses to see people. We say, he misses seeing people.
That is a very common mistake for English learners, so it is great to see the correct form modeled in the text. Paul misses the energy of being in the same room as his team. Even with advanced technology, a video call does not perfectly replace human connection.
It definitely does not. Moving along through their day, we reach the middle of the workday. This brings us to lunch and the concept of recharging. Emily takes her lunch break at 12:30 p.m.
The text gives us a specific detail here. She brings a lunchbox from home, and today she is eating pasta.
Bringing a lunchbox is a highly practical habit.
It is. In the conversation, Emily clearly outlines two comparative reasons for doing this. First, she says it is cheaper than going to a restaurant. Second, she says it is healthier.
Let's briefly look at those adjectives. She takes the base word cheap and adds ER to make cheaper. She takes healthy, drops the Y, and adds IER to make healthier.
Cheaper and healthier.
We use these comparative adjectives when we are weighing two options against each other. Making food at home is cheaper and healthier than buying food at a restaurant.
Paul also eats at home, of course, since he works there. He prepares a quick sandwich. But the most important part of this midday section is not the food they eat.
No, it is what happens after they eat.
Exactly. They both practice what we can call the art of the break.
Taking a break is essential. Paul leaves his apartment and takes a 10-minute walk outside. He specifically states that he does this to get some fresh air.
Getting fresh air is a very common English collocation words that naturally go together. It means going outside to breathe clean air, especially after being indoors for a long time.
Emily, on the other hand, stays inside her office building, but goes to a designated break room. There, she spends a few minutes chatting socially with her friends.
What's vital here is the reasoning behind these actions. Paul explicitly tells Emily, it helps your brain work better. He understands that stepping away from the computer screen is necessary.
We see the phrase stepping away. This is a phrasal verb.
How would you define that?
It means to physically move a short distance away from something. But in a professional context, it also means to mentally detach from your work for a moment.
Whether you step away to feel the wind outside like Paul, or you step away to laugh with friends like Emily, giving your mind a rest is a crucial component of a healthy daily routine.
Human beings cannot maintain strict focus continuously for 8 hours. We need to recharge our mental batteries.
I think we can all relate to that midday feeling where the brain just slows down. Taking that short walk or having that chat makes the afternoon much easier.
It really does.
Eventually, the workday comes to an end. This leads us into the late afternoon and the transition into home mode.
Emily finishes her tasks and leaves the office at 5:00 p.m. Paul closes his laptop at 5:30 p.m. Paul notes that the simple physical action of closing the laptop makes him feel instantly free. His workday is officially over.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Emily's transition is a bit longer. She has to take the bus back to her house. In the text, she mentions that the evening bus is often very crowded. Crowded means there are too many people packed into a small space. Paul hears this and says he hates crowded buses, reinforcing his appreciation for working from home.
But regardless of their different locations and commutes, they share a universal joy when work is finished. It is a feeling people across the globe understand. When Emily unlocks her front door and walks inside, the very first thing she does is change into her home clothes.
Home clothes. The text describes these as comfortable pants and a big loose t-shirt.
Yes.
Paul strongly agrees with this habit. He says that changing into comfortable clothes is the best feeling.
It serves a psychological purpose. Changing your clothing is a physical signal to your brain.
A signal.
Yes. It tells your mind the professional responsibilities are finished, the stress of the day is over, it is now time to relax and be yourself.
However, relaxing does not mean they immediately sit on the sofa and do nothing. Both Emily and Paul prioritize physical movement in the early evening.
Their exercise routines are specifically tailored to balance out their day jobs.
Paul spends his entire day sitting in a chair at a desk. Because of this, he requires vigorous exercise. The text states he is quite disciplined. He goes to the gym 3 times a week.
And on the alternating days, he goes for a run in the local park.
Notice the collocations here again. We say go to the gym and go for a run. Emily has a completely different exercise philosophy. Her workday involves commuting, navigating a busy office, and talking to many colleagues. It is noisy and active.
Therefore, she prefers a quiet exercise. She does yoga in her living room.
Again, we use the verb do with yoga. We say do yoga, not play yoga or make yoga. Yoga involves slow, controlled stretching and deep breathing.
Paul correctly observes in the conversation that yoga is excellent for flexibility.
Flexibility is the noun form of the adjective flexible. It refers to the ability of your body to bend and move easily without breaking or feeling pain.
For Emily, doing yoga not only improves her physical flexibility, but also helps her mind release the tension from the crowded office.
Following their exercise, they need to eat again. Let's examine their dinner routines. Paul generally cooks his dinner at 7:00 p.m. He shares a very modern habit. He listens to a podcast while he cooks his meal.
Listening to audio while doing physical tasks is incredibly common now. Emily prefers to eat a bit later, usually around 7:30 or 8:02 p.m. She eats dinner with her husband.
She refers to this mealtime as their quality time.
Quality time is a beautiful and very important phrase in English.
Let's explain that one clearly.
It refers to time that you spend giving your complete, undivided attention to someone you care about. It is not just sitting in the same room, it is actively engaging with them. Emily and her husband use this time to discuss their respective days.
But after the quality time of dinner comes a universal household reality, the chores. This is a fantastic vocabulary category for learners.
Let's define chores clearly. The word is spelled C-H-O-R-E-S. It starts with the CH sound, like in chair or cheese. Chores are the routine, necessary tasks you must complete to maintain a clean and functioning household.
Things like sweeping the floor.
Exactly. Sweeping the floor, washing the clothes, and cleaning the bathroom are all chores.
The conversation reveals a fascinating divide in how they manage these chores. Let's look at the dishes first. Emily and her husband have established a fair system. They take turns.
Taking turns means alternating the responsibility. If person A does the task on Monday, person B does the task on Tuesday.
In the text, Emily explains that her husband washed the dishes yesterday, which means tonight it is her turn. Dividing chores in this manner prevents one person from doing all the work.
Paul lives alone, so he cannot take turns with anyone. However, he relies on technology. He jokes in the conversation that his dishwasher machine is his best friend in the kitchen.
We also see a major difference in their weekly cleaning schedules. Paul prefers the method of doing a little bit of work every day.
He dedicates just 10 minutes every weekday evening to cleaning his kitchen. This prevents the mess from becoming overwhelming. Then he does his laundry, which means washing his clothes on Saturdays.
Emily's strategy is entirely different. She firmly states that she does not want to do any heavy cleaning on weekdays.
She wants her evenings after work to be purely for relaxation. Therefore, she saves all of her major cleaning tasks for Sunday.
This is a great example of how routines are highly personal. Neither method is objectively correct or incorrect. Doing a little bit every day or doing everything in one big session on the weekend are both valid strategies.
It simply depends on your personality and how you prefer to organize your time.
Which perfectly sets up the final and perhaps most important part of their day. We are moving into the evening, looking at how they prepare for sleep.
In the source text, Emily uses an essential phrasal verb to describe this period. She calls it time to wind down.
Wind down.
To wind down means to gradually relax after a period of activity or stress.
The literal origin of this phrase comes from old mechanical clocks or toys that you had to physically turn or wind up with a key to give them energy. As the toy operates, it slowly loses energy. It winds down until it finally stops.
We use this metaphor for our bodies and minds. We need a period to slowly lose our daytime energy before we can sleep.
So how do Emily and Paul wind down? We look at their evening entertainment. Emily likes to sit on her sofa and watch television, but she has instituted a strict personal rule. She refuses to watch the serious evening news.
She explains that the news is simply too stressful and makes her anxious right before bed.
Instead, she chooses to watch comedy shows to make herself laugh. Or she watches slow, calm nature documentaries about animals and landscapes.
After watching TV, she transitions to an even quieter activity. She tries to read a book for about 30 minutes. She humorously admits to Paul that sometimes she is so tired, she falls asleep with the book resting right on her face.
Paul's winding down strategy involves a creative hobby. He plays his acoustic guitar. He explains that focusing on the music helps him completely forget about the emails and the video calls from his workday.
Emily responds to this by using a lovely English idiom. She says that playing music is good for the soul.
Good for the soul.
This means an activity provides deep emotional comfort and happiness. After playing his guitar, Paul also picks up a book to read, noting that he's trying to build a habit of reading more this year.
Up to this point, their evening routines sound incredibly healthy and peaceful. But then, the conversation shifts to a major modern problem, the screen time struggle.
This raises an important question. The interviewer in the text asks them about using their mobile phones in bed. This question explores how modern technology disrupts our natural routines. Emily demonstrates a very smart strategy here. She understands the science of sleep.
Right. She mentions that the blue light emitted by phone screens actually tricks the human brain. The light mimics sunlight, so the brain stops producing the chemicals that make you feel sleepy.
Because she knows this, she has a strict physical boundary. She leaves her phone on a table all the way across the bedroom. She physically cannot reach the phone while she is lying in bed.
This is a brilliant tactic. By creating a physical distance, she removes the temptation. Paul unfortunately confesses to a very bad habit. He admits that he takes his phone into bed with him.
He tells Emily that he only intends to look at his social media applications for 1 minute. Just a quick check.
But we all know how that story ends. He starts scrolling, reading posts, watching short videos, and suddenly he realizes it is midnight. He accidentally stays up far later than he planned.
Let's connect this back to the very beginning of our analysis. Remember when Paul said he was a night owl, that he hated mornings, and that he needed 5 alarms to wake up?
Yes, the 5 alarms.
Yeah, the picture is complete. His difficult morning routine is a direct result of his poor evening routine. Staying up until midnight looking at a bright screen destroys his ability to wake up easily at 7 a.m.
It is a perfect example of cause and effect in a daily routine. Every action influences the next. But despite his struggle with his phone, Paul does share one absolutely beautiful habit that he practices right before he closes his eyes to sleep.
While lying in the dark, Paul intentionally thinks about 3 good things that happened to him during that specific day. It could be something big or something as small as a good cup of coffee.
Emily identifies this practice immediately. She calls it gratitude. Gratitude is a powerful noun. It is the state of feeling thankful and showing appreciation for the positive aspects of your life.
Emily suggests that practicing gratitude right before sleep actually helps create happy, peaceful dreams. From a psychological perspective, forcing your brain to focus on positive, thankful thoughts reduces the stress and anxiety that often keep people awake.
It is a wonderful way to end the day. Finally, they both go to sleep. Emily, who wakes up at 6:30 a.m., ensures she goes to bed at 10:30 p.m. She calculates that she needs exactly 8 solid hours of sleep to feel energized.
We use the word solid here to mean continuous and unbroken. Remember, she does not use the snooze button, so her sleep is not broken into tiny pieces.
Paul aims to turn off his light at 11:00 p.m., though, as we learned, his phone habit sometimes delays that goal.
Which brings us to the end of their 24-hour cycle. We have examined every major phase of Emily and Paul's day, from the morning alarms to the evening gratitude.
So what does this all mean? What does it mean for you, the language learner?
The primary takeaway from the source text is that a routine is a highly individual concept. There is no single correct way to live a day.
Some people naturally wake up early with soft music. Others need 5 loud alarms. Some people thrive working in a busy office. Others prefer the quiet of their living room.
The key, as Paul mentions near the end of the text, is to experiment and find a sequence of habits that keeps you personally healthy, productive, and reasonably happy.
You have to design the day that works for your unique biology and your specific lifestyle.
But there is a second, equally important lesson woven into this conversation. Right at the very end of the transcript, Emily and Paul offer a piece of advice directly to the audience learning English. They compare language learning to a daily routine.
They say 10 minutes every day is better than 2 hours once a week. That sentence is the absolute golden rule of learning any new skill, especially a language. Consistency is more powerful than intensity.
When you study English for just 10 or 15 minutes every single day, you are building a habit. Your brain encounters the vocabulary words like commute, colleague, chores, and wind down frequently enough that they transfer into your long-term memory.
If you only study once a week, your brain forgets the information in between sessions.
So we encourage you to make English a part of your daily routine. Listen to a deep dive like this one while you make breakfast, or read an article during your commute. Make it a small, unbreakable habit.
We want to thank you for spending your time with us today, practicing your English listening skills. We hope breaking down this conversation has given you new tools to describe your own daily life.
It has been a pleasure.
Before we finish, we want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. We have spent this time discussing how Emily and Paul's habits shape their days. But think about this. How much does the language you speak change the habits you choose?
That is an interesting thought.
Some researchers suggest that learning a new language actually creates new neural pathways in your brain, essentially rewiring how you think and act. Think about Paul's habit of gratitude and Emily's rule about leaving her phone across the room.
Great habits to build.
What is one small, simple habit you could add to your evening routine tonight, using English, to make your morning tomorrow just a little bit brighter? It is a fascinating connection to consider. Until next time, keep practicing, keep building those daily habits, and have a wonderful day.